Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Michael Sauer. I'm the Assistant Director for Career and Employer Engagement at the Magna Career Center. Thank you so much for joining us today. This is our Careers in Advertising and Marketing event with three really great organizations. Really happy to have speakers from the Ad Council, IPG Media Lab, and Worldwide. And they're going to talk with us today about the company culture, the things that they do, some of their internship job opportunities, and more. So this is a really great event for you to kind of get this inside track on what these organizations are doing. So I want to thank everybody that's joining us today. So quite a few Brooklyn College students. I know that there are other CUNY students here as well. And we're going to jump right into it. So the first presentation today will be with Catherine Yaraboy, who is a campaign analyst at the Ad Council. Thank you so very much for being here with us. Really appreciate it.
Of course.
And let's start talking about the Ad Council. Let us know what does the Ad Council do and more.
Okay, so just as a brief introduction, like Michael said, I am Catherine. I work at the Ad Council. I've been here for, I guess, a couple of years now. I actually was an intern at the Ad Council my junior year of college. And then I worked at a media agency for a bit after graduating and saw that Ad Council had a position open and wanted to go into something more social good focused and ended up applying, and obviously I'm here now. So I actually work in the analytics department. So my job is to really make sure that we're collecting all the data that we can and also interpreting that data to really optimize our campaigns and make them as good as possible, and reporting on results and things like that. So I think it would be helpful to just give you an overview of who we are. We like to say that where creativity and cause converge. We use the power of communications to tackle the toughest issues. And the way that I like to explain what the Ad Council does is, if you think of a traditional ad agency, you're creating creative assets in order to communicate a message about selling a product or selling a specific service and kind of building awareness and hype around that product. But for us, we kind of try to do the same thing, except we're not selling a product or service. We're actually trying to change behaviors or change attitudes. And in some cases, having people sign up for specific resources that will help them with whatever situation they're dealing with. So on the next slide. We were founded in 1942. We have 30 active campaigns, so about 30 plus, I think right now we're at like 35 or 37 campaigns of different social causes that we work on with various different partnerships. So the Ad Council only works with other nonprofits or government agencies. And we also have over 10,000 different media partners. So this is a good time to kind of explain our model. So in a traditional ad agency, you would actually pay for that ad spot. So let's say you want to put up a billboard or you want to run some ads on Facebook. In a traditional ad space, you would obviously buy that space and then run your creative that you develop. But for us, because we work with a lot of social issues, we actually get that media space donated to us. So we have a lot of media relationships and a lot of different partners across the industry who really want to help out and help us spread different messages depending on what the campaign is. We also work across both media, tech, marketing, government, and the nonprofit world. So this is a really, really great place to learn about everything from just basic marketing and project management skills to really digging into those really, really technical aspects of how do you set up an ad, or how do Snapchat filters work. And a lot of times, actually, these media partners will donate that ad space to us because they're testing out new technology. So I think we were one of the first people that tested like those Instagram AR filters because they wanted to test out the new technology and see how it can be used in the advertising space. For different campaigns, how we decide what to work on is that the issue has to be nonpartisan. It has to be national in scope, so we don't really typically take on local issues. It has to be crucial and kind of top of mind at the moment that we get proposed to work on the issue. It has to be actionable. So we focus a lot on individual action leading to mass change. And then it also has to be measurable, of course, because a lot of times we're working with nonprofits that need to report that kind of data to different grants that they work on, or sorry, that they're funded off of. So we need to make sure that we can showcase that we have made an impact on the issue. So these are the different campaigns that we work on. We have new efforts pitched to us every day. We really focus on these 4 buckets of health, safety, education, and family and community. And health is really a really growing area for us, especially these past 2 years. We were very, very closely working with the CDC on a lot of the coronavirus protective behavior messaging that a lot of you have probably seen. And we're also working very closely with them on getting people vaccinated and providing information and resources for people on how to get vaccinated. So definitely a very huge undertaking, to say the least. So in all of the work that we do, we really try to meet our audiences where they are. So that can be social media platforms, YouTube videos, television, even traditional billboards for certain audiences. And we try to use the power of storytelling to really capture the hearts and minds of our audiences, and then also arm them with information, tools, and resources in order to create the change that we're trying to create. And every cause is different, so every audience is unique, and each of our campaigns has its own approach. And what area we kind of focus on really depends on the campaign. So sometimes it's talent partnerships to get that trusted messenger. Sometimes it's, that, like I said, those traditional ads on billboards and TV, and we even have developed Alexa apps and things like that. So it really ranges quite drastically. I always think it's helpful to see just an example of what a full-fledged campaign would look like. So this is for our youth suicide prevention effort called Seize the Awkward, which aims to empower young adults to get involved when they suspect that a friend is experiencing mental health issues or maybe at risk for suicide. So definitely a very heavy topic that needs to be approached in the right way with the right sort of communication to provide those tools. So for similar to most of our efforts, we developed a base campaign that had video content and tutorials. So that's what you'll see at the top there. And then another big piece of this effort was talent. As you can see, we had Billie Eilish, Tyler Oakley, and a lot of other really prominent creators. And what this allowed us to do is to offer a trusted voice to the audience that we're trying to reach and provide authentic stories. So Billie Eilish shared her struggles with mental health and how she's been able to, talk to her friends or talk to her community in order to get resources and get help. And also a really big plus of using talent is that they have really large social networks. So if they share our messaging on their social platforms, we're reaching the right audience, but we're also expanding our reach. And then here you can see a couple examples of just more traditional, what you would traditionally kind of think of as advertising. So out of home, this is actually called, in the second image, this is actually called wild posting, where you'll post different billboards, or sorry, different ads on kind of like construction sites and things like that. Digital banners, of course, this is like if you go to the New York Times or something like that and you see an ad, very traditional kind of digital advertising, and then social video content as well, not only for us to post on our channels, but also for talent to kind of redistribute to their audiences as well. So how do we actually do this? So I think it's helpful to just understand the different ad council departments first and what makes up our team. So kind of the person who manages everything, make sure everything runs smoothly, that we get all of our deliverables on time, that make sure every department is kind of doing their part in a timely manner, is the account and project management team. So this is a really great department, I think, especially to start off in. If you aren't sure what you want to do in the advertising space, you kind of want to get a feel for what every department does, because you get to work with everyone. My team, the analytics team, works very, very closely with the project management team, because we deliver those insights and deliver the data to them and kind of work together to understand what the data actually means, what worked well, what didn't work well, and how can we communicate that to our sponsor, as well as apply it to actually make the campaign better or make the next round of creative work better for our audience. Then we have the strategy and consumer research department. I actually interned in this department. You will also hear it being referred to as the market research department. But this is the team that does a lot of, they do a lot of research, a lot of focus groups to make sure that we're understanding our issue and understanding our target audience, and also understanding in what ways we need to communicate the issue so that our target audience is receptive to it. They're also the team, I'll talk about communication checks in a bit, but they're the team that runs that. So whenever we create creative, they are the ones that are running it through and making sure that it's communicating the message that we want it to communicate and is actually working effectively. There is also the data and analytics team. So again, my team, pretty self-explanatory, but we do work very closely with other departments to make sure that we're able to collect the data in the way that we need so that we can interpret the results. And then when we present results, we make sure that we get input from every other department to make sure that we're getting the full picture rather than just focusing on the data in isolation. Then there's also the digital product management team. I think the title is pretty self-explanatory, but if you think of any digital product, so an Alexa app, a regular app, trying to think, a website, anything like that, anything that is owned by the campaign, they are the ones who manage the process of creating that, designing that, and making sure that it delivers on the resources that our audience needs. Then there's social media and public relations. So they work very closely with the talent, as I mentioned earlier. And obviously, if we have any owned social media channels for the campaign, they're the ones that run that. For media planning and outreach, they're really, really crucial in actually getting that donated media. So they're the ones that make sure that not only our Facebook flights and Snapchat and things like that run smoothly, but they also make sure that our TV partners are aware that we're launching a new campaign and they're ready to support us with donated ad space. And then no organization would be complete without a finance and accounting team. Very, very fun department. I know that they get this bad rep, but they're awesome and very kind. And also they get you your paychecks. So very important. So this is what we like to present to understand our research-driven process and how we're constantly iterating on whatever issue we take on. So once we get a campaign that is approved, so a social cause that's approved, we have a sponsor, we go into the research and planning phase. So in this phase, this is mostly the strategy and evaluation team in partnership with that campaign management team that I mentioned earlier. They're looking at existing literature on the issue. They're looking at, a lot of times, the sponsors we work with, they're really trying to think of the youth suicide prevention campaign that is through the JED Foundation, and they have a lot of existing research on that topic already. So we'll work very closely with them to kind of understand what research already exists, what additional research needs to be done, what kind of language we need to use in our spot in order to speak about the issue in an effective manner, and so that our target audience is also understanding what we're talking about, and also just understanding who are these different audience groups that are being affected by the issue or involved in the issue in other ways. All of this research then gets translated into the strategy and brief for the creative. So usually they'll narrow down on one target audience, maybe a secondary audience as well. And then also just understanding what statistics or what points we really need to touch upon within the creative itself. We then work very closely with an ad agency or creative ad agency to develop the creative based on all of this research and based on the strategy. And then that actually usually results in a pitch deck, which has about I would say 3 to 5 max, different creative ideas and different creative executions. So these meetings are super fun to sit on because you can actually see the kind of thought process around this creative strategy. Then usually we'll narrow down on 1 to 2 creatives, creative executions, I should say, and then that will go into comm checks. So communication checks are super important because I don't know if everyone's familiar with the whole like Jenner scandal with Pepsi and everything, but one of the reasons that that probably happened was because they weren't conducting communication checks. So they didn't make sure that once they developed their creative, that they ran it through and made sure that it actually resonated with the audience and actually communicated what they wanted to communicate. So that's super important for us because a lot of times we're so close to this research and the strategy development that you don't realize that it's not actually, delivering on what you want to deliver or saying what you want to say to the audience that you're trying to reach. So assuming that that passes communication checks, the creative then goes into production. And then once that is live, PR and social media actually help and distribute that work and make sure that, the industry as a whole is aware that this partnership is happening, and they help us kind of deliver on the message. This goes into our donated media and distribution. So making sure that all of our media partners are receiving the assets so that they can actually run them on their platforms. And then step 8 is monitoring and assessment. That's really where my department comes in, and we kind of go through and make sure that we're iterating on these ideas. Sometimes we'll even notice, we'll look at like what's doing well and what's doing poorly and why that might be and try to execute on it. But we'll also look at trends. So for example, we have a saving for retirement campaign, and we noticed a really huge disparity in how some of our resources were performing or being accessed when we compared between males and females. So that is something that we discuss internally and are also discussing with the sponsor to see how we can execute that in a new round of creative that's really focused on addressing saving for retirement among women. I don't know how many of you are marketing majors or communication majors, but this is something you might have seen in some of your marketing classes, but this is kind of the traditional conversion funnel that you can think of for when you're selling a product. So you have to first expose people to the product, build awareness around it, have people begin engaging with the idea of buying that product or putting it into their consideration set. And then eventually the idea is that they'll buy that product or somehow engage with your services. So obviously this is a bit different when we're looking at social issues and changing attitudes or behaviors or getting people to sign up for different programs. But here we have our donated media at the top and understanding reach there. And then building awareness around, in some cases, we really have to focus on building awareness around the issue itself, but also, of course, building the campaign awareness as well. In the next funnel, we have part of the funnel, we have website and social media analytics. So are people actually engaging with the resources we've built out for that issue? And then, of course, the reason why we do everything is behavioral change or attitudinal change. In some cases, we really have to focus on attitudinal change first, and then the idea that once attitudes are changed about a certain issue, that will eventually lead to behavioral change as well, which is really the end goal. So through this approach, we've made real measurable impact across a lot of different issues. For example, for our buzz driving and Friends Don't Let Friends Drive Drunk campaign, the drunk driving deaths have fallen by a third since the campaign launched. Here you'll see for our adoption from foster care campaign, more than 32,000 youths listed on Adopt US Kids have been placed with permanent families. And then of course our COVID campaign, just for context, usually these kind of large numbers are not seen until a campaign is in market for like several years. But here, because of the huge support we received from the ad industry as a whole in helping us to disseminate information, we were able to build a very impressive 74% awareness of our PSAs among the general public. So if any of that sounded interesting to you, you could join our team. So these are the core values that you'll see on our website, but I think they really ring true. In order to reach the audience that we're trying to reach with a lot of our, obviously like our social issues, deal with a lot of various audiences, and we kind of need to understand where they are in their headspace, where they are socioeconomically, where they are in other regards of life. So we have to be empathetic and strive to understand and be open-minded and compassionate. And some of the people that I work with, I will have to just say, coming from kind of like a traditional ad agency space, they're some of the nicest people that I've ever met and very good friends of mine now. So definitely rings true, I would say. Another thing to keep in mind is that because we're working for social change, we have to think innovatively and outside of the box, and kind of think of how we can change that status quo and look at things from a different perspective. And we really believe that a culture of innovation is necessary for creating deeply impactful work. We also embrace our differences. We have a lot of workshops actually, and like bringing our true selves to work, being open, honest, and supportive. And of course, we believe that diversity in all of its forms makes us stronger and more creative. And we've also had workshops on that. So we also actually have 4 ERGs, which are employee resource groups, that help us kind of discuss this in a work setting, but also just make friends really while you're here. We also focus on impact. Obviously, we want to make a measurable difference in people's lives. So we set goals and we work to achieve them. And then we also strive to be our best selves and bring our best intentions and passion for everything we do. So this is probably what you actually came here for, but our summer internships are 9 weeks. They're paid, I believe this year they're paying $15 an hour, and they're between June and August. This year they'll be held remotely, but next year they're hoping to go back into the office and hold them there. And also I just wanted to call out, because it is kind of late in the internship process, if you don't see something that works for you or something that you're interested in on site, definitely send your resume to that email at the bottom, internships@adcouncil.org. They love to see someone who's continuously interested in Ad Council and what we do, because they take that very much into consideration, that people are passionate for this kind of work. So if you're interested, but you missed the deadline, or there's not something there this year, definitely still send your resume, and we'll also keep you on file for any entry-level positions if you're in that process of graduating. And it's a really good opportunity to learn about advertising, marketing, and technology, and work really collaboratively. Usually, if you're an intern, you're kind of, even if there's like several positions for that specific department, you're usually working with one kind of campaign set. So you're going to be the only intern on that campaign or on that issue. So you get a lot of exposure, and they definitely don't just make you bring coffee to them. I remember being very busy when I was there, so it was a really good learning opportunity. And then at the end of the year, the Ad Council interns actually put together a pitch for the next Ad Council campaign, and we have taken those pitches and run with them in the past. But it's a very good opportunity to kind of apply everything you learned over the summer, and you present the pitch to all of Ad Council, including the CEO. So it's a very good opportunity for exposure as well. Right now, we have the design and innovation internship open, as well as, it's not listed here, but the campaign management internship is also open. But I'll read through the design and innovation internship. So it is, sorry, you would work with the design and innovation strategy vice president, and you support the launch of an internal design consultancy within Ad Council. So this is a very design focused internship, as you can tell from the title. But you would also research digital innovation and design trends and contribute to our internal innovation newsletter, leverage graphic design skills, and then you would also attend and write up learnings from a training around human-centered design and innovation, which is a very big conversation point for us right now, like human-centered design. And then, of course, you would attend different meetings and assist with kind of those administrative and project management tasks as well. Okay. And then I also wanted to just go through some of the job openings that we have. These are full-time job openings if you're already graduated or graduating at the end of this year. But for entry level, we have the assistant campaign manager position. So that is kind of that department I mentioned that oversees everything. So again, a very good opportunity if you're interested in kind of getting to know the ad industry more. Maybe you're new to that kind of setup, or you're new to the nonprofit world and you want to understand how all the different aspects work, or you're just new to communications in general. So a very good starting point for sure. And also if you're really good at project management, definitely a huge plus, because that would basically be your main job. And something else I wanted to call out here is that you get to learn a lot about a lot of different issues. Like I work on everything from saving for retirement to caregivers assistance to LGBT acceptance to trying to think of my other, empowering young girls in STEM. So you really get to know the latest research and kind of understand a lot of different social issues, and also obviously get experience in the advertising world. We also have a general application if you'd like us to keep your resume on file. So again, similar to the internship process, if you don't see something you like, definitely still submit your resume so that we know that there is some continued interest. Or if a position opens up, sometimes they'll reach out to you directly because they already have that on file. So if you want to apply, you can go to this link here, or you can go to adcouncil.org/join our team. Again, you can email us at internships@adcouncil.org. We also have a very up-to-date LinkedIn. So I would say LinkedIn is actually the best place to stay on top of any new job postings or anything like that. There's actually a way, I believe, to set up notifications so that if we post something new, it will come through your email or whatever it might be, give you a notification on LinkedIn. We also do post them on our social platforms as well. So that's a good way to stay in touch with us. And then we also have some other kind of more short-term creative opportunities if you're interested in that. So for example, Project Yellow Light is in partnership with the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration. That's a mouthful. But basically it's a competition where you can submit your own creative PSA for a cash scholarship prize, or sorry, a monetary scholarship prize. And in the past, they've actually also shown the winning spots in Times Square. So it's a very good exposure for your ad, to be played in such a prominent place. We hire copywriters, both kind of outsourced, and we have some internal copywriters as well. In terms of what training is provided, I think usually they would expect you to have some sort of experience coming in. I would say that's different for internships, but for like full-time positions, they would expect you to have some experience. But at least in my experience, if you have some experience, but you need some additional training in certain aspects of it, Ad Council is very, very good at providing that, especially if you're very vocal about, like in my case, for example, I have no coding experience, and it was something that would have been helpful in my role, in my opinion. So I actually, presented that to my manager, and she was very quick in being able to approve a training for me. So I actually got to attend a 10-week course through the ad council on front end web design, which was fantastic and something I wouldn't have been able to do at a lot of other places. So they're very good at providing resources, especially if you present them with what you want to learn or like a class that you want to learn. They're pretty good at approving it as long as it would be beneficial for your role.
What are some skills and softwares a candidate should be familiar with prior to applying? And you obviously mentioned you were an intern with the council at one point. What were some experiences that stuck with you present day that you take to your everyday life and obviously your position there? And one more question that I didn't type, but it just came to my mind now. What are some interesting projects that interns, or even including yourself, have worked on that have like stood out to people that have worked there?
I'll start backwards, I guess. So for your last question, I think that the intern project at the end, like being able to pitch a fully fledged campaign. So each of the interns, because they work in different departments, you kind of work within your wheelhouse of what department you're intern in, which makes sense. But that is actually something that I've been asked about in interviews once I graduated, since I did that internship junior year. So it looks really good on resumes, but also it is like I think it's very different to learn about something versus like actually applying it. So shadowing people is very interesting, but then if you're like trying to do it yourself, I think it's a very different experience. So for me, that was super helpful to just see how doing the process myself actually works, and also seeing like how much I learned over the summer where I wouldn't have known where to really start before that. And I think our year we did, I think we had like a skin cancer focused like public health campaign, and I didn't realize I was interested in public health until we did that project. And I forget what I pitched, but it wasn't like a very good idea to be honest. But then your team kind of discusses on all the different ideas and decides on one, and I was like, oh, this is the least interesting one of them all. But then it ended up being really interesting. And I ended up learning a lot about how different populations also perceive the medical field. And there's a lot of like sociology research on that as well. So just a very interesting learning for me, and something that like my senior year, I ended up taking a couple public health classes because of doing that project. Then your second question, would you mind repeating?
Yeah.
Or first question,
So,
whichever one.
the other questions I had, what skills and software should a potential candidate be familiar with that kind of gives them a leg up when working for something like the ad council? And from your personal experience, what skills and just experiences have you just gained that you incorporate into your everyday life and obviously the workplace?
So for tools, this is kind of generic sounding, but really Excel, like PowerPoint. If you're good with like visualizing data, that's something that I personally struggle with, ironically. But the data is only as good and as actionable as you can present it, or even like if you have an idea, it's only as good as you can kind of convey it to people. So that is something that if you're good at storytelling, if you're you don't have to be like a data expert, but I think in any role, because we are so data driven, if you're just comfortable with numbers and you don't get like scared off of by them, that's a huge plus. I would say just like writing skills in general, that you're able to write professional emails, things like that, that goes a really long way, especially if you're in a sponsor facing role. And then something that I think like helped me get my internship, because later on my manager kind of discussed this with me, but I was really, really passionate about using communications to make social change. And like, I was really interested in how language changes people's perspectives on things, and how just like the role of communication, the role of language in society. So I think if you bring that kind of passion for creating social good, if you bring that kind of passion for communications and being able to create change, that's a really huge plus. And then your second question was experiences that I learned that I took into day to day. For me, it was really understanding, because I was in the research department, the market research department. I spent a lot of time reading a lot of different papers, which sounds really maybe not fun for some people, but for me, it really changed how I viewed certain like structural issues, to be quite frank. But yeah, it just exposed me to a lot of different ideas that I don't think I was exposed to previously, especially within, like I mentioned, the space of public health. So for me, I feel like that's made me a much more empathetic person, and like since we do a lot of focus groups, you hear a lot of one-to-one interviews. So not only from the perspective of, I'm trying to think, like, for example, with the COVID vaccine, we do a lot of interviews with people who are like anti-maskers. And then we also do a lot of interviews with people who are like very pro-masking, I guess. So you kind of get to see both perspectives, and you learn how to be empathetic with both viewpoints, and being able to reach both of those audiences actually in the end creates more social change, because you're not cutting out, a specific group just based on their viewpoints, and that creates more change, hopefully. I believe there's only really 2 internships left at this point. So they are usually just for like next year as well. Usually they'll go live at somewhere in March, either the beginning of March or the beginning of April. This year they were a little later, so just because we're a little bit low on bandwidth with all the COVID work we're doing right now, but they went live in the beginning of, in mid-March. Typically they are on a rolling basis, so the earlier you apply, the better chance you have of being considered. So I would just encourage you to apply as soon as possible. There is like a cover letter section, but it's not required. So definitely, even if you can just submit your resume, if you don't have bandwidth to write a cover letter right now, I would still encourage you to submit it. And then even if you aren't considered this year, we'll have your resume on file for next year, which gives you a leg up already. So we actually outsource our creative development. So we work with creative ad agencies to actually physically make the creative. But I would say that, I don't know, obviously, well, I guess our PR team and our social media team make a lot of the social posts. So if you're interested in like social media creative, that would be a good department. In terms of like, even for my role, I get invited to all the creative presentations, and the campaign management team has a lot of creative sway as well. So if you want to be really closely tied, I guess, to the creative development process, the campaign management team is a really good spot. I would say the design and innovation team obviously also has a lot of creative leeway, but that is more like high level, kind of like overall ad council viewpoint. And then the digital product management team, that utilizes a lot of design as well, because that's really, if anyone knows about like user experience, you're really thinking about how people are navigating through sites, and applying the creative strategy for the overall campaign to a digital product. And you do a lot of like web mockups and stuff like that. So if you're interested in like wireframes, if you're interested in user experience and that kind of creativity, that's a really good department to be in as well. And I think most of them have design backgrounds for obvious reasons, I guess. But yeah, so that's a really great department as well.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. So we're just about out of time with the Ad Council. I do want to thank them, thank Catherine for your time to kind of give us this overview of the company and what opportunities are there, and the various work that you do. And I think it's really great, and I hope it's helpful for the students that have attended. Could they stay in touch with you in some way, maybe on LinkedIn?
Yeah, I can. Would it be most helpful if I sent my LinkedIn URL, or you can just, you should be able to find me on LinkedIn if you look up Catherine. Yeah, my name that's pinned here. I should come up hopefully. But if people have trouble finding me, definitely just forward me their emails, or I can send them my LinkedIn information as well.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. Okay, Catherine, thank you so much. This was really great. Glad to have you here. And like I said, I hope that students were able to get a lot of really valuable information from that presentation, and they know how to stay in touch with you and also find a lot of those opportunities that you had mentioned. So, yes. Okay, so we're gonna move on to the next part here of our session. So next we have the presenters from IPG Media Lab and Worldwide. Both organizations are sort of under the same umbrella, so they will talk a little bit more about that. So we have the representatives from Worldwide. Thank you so much for joining us today. And I know that we do have others from the IPG Media Lab, which is Sean and Ryan, and they will be presenting as well. So Michael, tell us a little bit about Worldwide. You should be able to share the screen.
I think Sean is going to share.
Okay.
So we can get that set up.
Okay, great.
Can you guys see the screen?
Yes.
Excellent.
Okay. So thank you for having us today. We can just go to the next slide. Okay. So we're going to go over today who we are as an agency and what makes us unique, and then we'll hand it off to the IPG Media Lab afterwards and come back at the end to talk about potential job opportunities. Next slide. My name is Michael Knopf. I've been with for about 15 years. Every agency has different titles that they use. So I'm what we call a client business partner, which is a fancy way of saying that I'm an account manager. I work on the United States Postal Service business, and I graduated from SUNY Binghamton with a major in math and history. So, and I didn't take any marketing classes, so definitely not a prerequisite to get into this business. Mariana is not yet with us. She'll be joining in a few minutes. Every day is different here in the agency world, and she was pulled into a last-minute fire drill with a client. So she'll hopefully be joining in a little bit. But she is on the Johnson & Johnson business, and we have a whole separate unit set up for Johnson & Johnson. We call it J3. She works on the Neutrogena and Aveeno brands, and she is a CUNY alum from Baruch College, and she has a BA in corporate communications. So a little bit more of a relevant background. Okay, so what is basically, is a media agency, and our #1 job is to get the right messages in front of the right people at the right time. That is, in a nutshell, what a media agency does. And we do all of this to achieve whatever it is the client needs us to achieve, whether it's awareness of a new product, driving traffic so consumers can get more information, maybe it's lead generation, but it all comes down to making sure that you're getting those messages in front of the right people at the right time. And we use all sorts of different media channels. On the upper right, you'll see those street signs. So we could be placing our ads on television, newspaper, radio. Within the internet, it could be social media, mobile, search, audio, video. So we do all of that. And then on the bottom right, that chart that you cannot read is all about social media. It includes media partners, social media intelligence tools, targeting tactics, and not everything even fits on that eye chart. So you can see how it really does take a big team to navigate the world of media, and that's just a very small snapshot of it. So this is our leadership team, and really to make it all work, it takes all types of talent coming from all sorts of disciplines, and they are definitely represented in our leadership team. We have different backgrounds, ethnicities, skills, experts in social media, strategy, finance, negotiations, and data analytics. Everyone brings something different to the table. So when we're talking to our various audiences, we can adapt our strategy to address all the different life experiences that are out there and figure out what levers to pull and what channels to use in order to make the best impact. This picture was actually taken by Adweek. We had won Media Agency of the Year, and it was in February of last year. So it's one of the last times that this team was actually physically together. So it's kind of a nice picture to see. We are a rather large organization. We're a global network. We have 3,000 people working with us in 130 offices around the world. And in the US, we are in 7 cities. And in some cases, we have multiple offices in the same city. In New York, our main office is on 33rd Street, right above the Manhattan Mall. We also have a satellite office downtown that houses American Express and Spotify. The American Express team was housed downtown just to be closer to the clients who are also downtown. And then we have another satellite office not too far from the one on 33rd Street for the Johnson & Johnson business. And then in Detroit, we were able to open a second office when we won the Quicken Loans business. So we have a number of different places to go if you are not looking to stay in the New York City area. So American Express, Johnson & Johnson, Quicken Loans, those are just a few of the brands that we work with. We like to say we create brand momentum for a large and growing list of premier brands, pun intended. Our largest brands definitely include like Coca-Cola and J&J, but we also just won Enterprise Holdings, which includes Enterprise, Alamo, and National Car Rentals. That's going to be working out of the central region. And we won Behr Paint, which will be on the West Coast. So definitely a broad array of clients in different industries. So belongs to the IPG Media Brands family of companies, which there are about a dozen or so specialty agencies in that family, depending on the region that you're in. And as the largest agency in the network, we hold the primary relationship for a lot of those clients that we were just talking about. We hold the largest relationship, and so we are responsible for doing the planning and buying for those brands, and then we bring in these specialty agencies to help flesh out those plans. So I'll just name a few as examples. Matterkind is one of our agencies. They specialize in programmatic, or also known as addressable advertising. Addressable media is all about finding your target audience wherever they are digitally. So as opposed to buying, for example, WebMD for people who are interested in health, you can find people who are interested in health on any platform. And that's generally done through technology that the programmatic team would use. Reprise specializes in search and social media. Rapport is an interesting one. Rapport focuses on experiential and out-of-home marketing. So billboards, bus shelters, and event-based marketing. They actually made headlines earlier this year. They announced that they would only use a technology for billboard vinyls that eats smog. So they coat the vinyl with a certain chemical, and so the vinyl interacts with the air to remove pollution. So there are interesting things going on at all of these companies, and I think that one in particular really speaks to the way that IPG Media Brands sees themselves as stewards of society and really being good citizens of the world. We'll talk a little bit more about that for in particular. So better science, better art, better outcomes. This term came because a few years ago when we were pitching the Coca-Cola business, we were asked by the team at Coke, what's the tweet for your agency? And the team at our company came up with this: better science with better art leads to better outcomes. It first was the structuring principle of our strategy practice, and then it became our company mantra. And the mantra allowed us to really make a pivot from thinking of ourselves as just a media agency to becoming a creative media agency. So just to describe what this means a little bit more, We start with better science, which is the application of media intelligence, data, and analytics to come up with insights that we'll use to build the plan. And then we take that science and develop strategies. So as much as media can be scientifically driven and all about the data, there's still a huge human component to analyze consumer behavior and decide how you're going to make the biggest impact. So understanding people as humans and not just data points. And so that's the art of what we do. And then better outcomes is about how good we did. So our job is to drive sales or share or affinity for the brand, any number of different goals, and we measure all of that so that we can take the learnings, understanding what worked and what didn't work, and we can use that to further improve our plans the next time. So all of that, once we're building the plans, and we use the science and the art to find and sometimes create moments that are really going to matter for our target audiences. Places where we can put our messages where we think we'll have the best chance of making strong connections between the brands and the consumers. And we think about these moments in two different ways. There are persuasion moments and there are precision moments, and how we can combine them in our plans to drive the best results for the clients. So persuasion moments are those big moments in culture that a brand can either create or be a part of. So think about large cultural events like the Super Bowl or the holidays. Brands like to associate themselves with those big moments. So you create an affinity for them as you would have the affinity for those big cultural moments. And then from a precision standpoint, those moments are more targetable, tangible, they're action-based moments, normally on the path to purchase. So we can intercept consumers when they're about to purchase or in the process of making decisions. So if I'm a college student, I might receive ads about school supplies or furnishings for my apartment or my dorm right before the fall semester starts. That's more of a precision moment. But in order to figure out where we can place those moments, we have to know and understand all the different media channels and how they're each used by consumers. Because those moments can happen anywhere. They can happen when you're watching a video or reading a magazine, searching for something in Google, or commenting on something on social. So we really need to have a great understanding of all of that. And our advice for pursuing a job in media is to keep up with all the latest news on what these types of companies are bringing forward. So, ask yourself, what is Snapchat adding to their capabilities? Or what is Clubhouse and why are people using it? And what does it mean for the advertising community? The truth is that keeping up with advertising trends is really a never-ending job, but it's one that we love, and that's why we're doing what we're doing. We do have a video to share with you, but before we play it, I just want to ask you to keep an eye out for all the different placements where you see branding and messaging. It could be the side of a can of soda, it could be a subway station, it could be in your social media feed, and then we also have some stats on how some of these campaigns did. we're going to talk to you now about the cultural aspects of what makes special. And we could spend a lot of time telling you about all the awards that we've won for our capabilities, the business wins, the client satisfaction. But I'm not going to go into any of that other than to say we're especially proud of the awards we won for best places to work, which are the two at the bottom. And we think this really reflects the type of inclusive and flexible culture that we've built, where we support one another in an equitable work environment. And this culture is not just the way we act towards one another internally, it's external too. And we think it's important to be, as I said, good global citizens for us and for our clients. And that's reflected in our industry-leading thought leadership. So we're going to go through a few examples of our thought leadership. And from that, hopefully you'll get a sense of how we treat one another internally as well. So the first example of that thought leadership comes from back at the start of the pandemic, with so much news about death, frankly, and portable refrigerated morgues. There were lots of brands who wanted to stay away from any content having to do with the pandemic. But we realized that if brands didn't advertise in stories about the virus, then it wouldn't pay for reputable news organizations to offer articles with accurate information. And that would mean that a lot of them would shy away and post other information, and there would be this vacuum. And the result of that would be that most of the information would come from irreputable sources, mostly through social media. So we worked out brand safety guidelines that kept us away from the worst of the bad news, but still supported responsible COVID-related journalism. So that was a really important thing to recognize and to steward for our brands. Another example comes from what we call our media responsibility principles. So Darryl Lee is our global CEO of IPG Media Brands, and he introduced these principles by saying, it's not enough for brand safety to be about protecting the brand. There has to also be a commitment to protect the communities that a brand serves. And he explained that the principles were developed as a response to the Black Lives Matter movement and the importance of making hate speech or incitement to violence on media platforms and social media platforms in particular unacceptable. So we now do a quarterly audit of social media partners to track what policies they have in place to remove negative content and how well they enforce those policies. Because frankly, we don't want as a company, and we don't think our clients should want, to support social media platforms that are spreading hate. Our third and final example comes from what we call the equity upfronts. And this is something that we hope the rest of the industry will adopt, as they actually are adopting the media responsibility principles. When we examined the role of Black-owned and Black-targeted media platforms, we found that investment across the industry has been declining for years. And there are many reasons for that. And we don't have the time to go through and talk about technology and efficiencies and all of that. But we do have to recognize that these partners represent Black culture and Black voice in an authentic way that Black consumers engage with differently. They want to see partners that are expressing their lives and lifestyles in an authentic way. So we also know that Black Americans overwhelmingly support brands that take a stand on social issues such as racial injustice. So we're addressing this head on, and we're doing a number of different, what we call upfront presentations, and bringing in these partners to present to the agency so that we're more informed about them. And then we're setting goals for ourselves to make sure that we are using more minority-owned businesses. We, as part of the first batch, some of the examples of brands that we brought in were Allen Media's The Griot, Revolt, BET, TV One, and Urban One. There were a large number of those, and we're going to do others in the future focused on different media channels. So it might be focused on audio or social, and then we'll also do it against other minority groups as well to try to create a more equitable playing field for those minority-owned businesses. Now, none of that can be possible without having what we call better people at because it's our people that define and its culture that really makes this agency a great place to work. And there are two other aspects of the company culture that I do want to mention. A diversity, equity, and belonging council, which is really dedicated to developing and promoting a diverse environment in which we can all thrive, regardless of race, ethnicity, gender identity, or religion. We think everyone should feel like they can bring their authentic selves to work every day and have an equitable opportunity to advance in their careers. So when you join you can volunteer for any number of task forces. And I would say this is by far one of the most popular. And then finally, we have Bridge, which stands for Better Results Include Diverse Group Experiences. This is another volunteer opportunity. When a team is putting together plans that include a diverse audience, whether it's LGBTQ or Hispanic, Bridge members support those teams to help brainstorm strategies to make those plans come to life. Or they might evaluate plan ideas that were created without their input. But Bridge is also an opportunity for those employees that share commonalities to get to know one another and enhance the agency culture as a whole. So I think it's fair to say that we have a lot that makes unique and a great place to work, and our IPG Media brand partners are a great part of that story. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Sean and Ryan at one of those partners, the IPG Media Lab, and then we'll come back at the end to talk about career opportunities, and we can answer questions then.
Thanks, Michael. And hello, everyone. I'm going to put my video on for just a brief second so you guys know I'm a real person sitting at a computer, but I have to turn it off because my Wi-Fi is not very great. But just wanted to introduce and have a face to a name for you guys. But I'm joined today by my colleague, Ryan Miller, and together we're representing the IPG Media Lab, and we're excited to be here. So the goal for us, our piece of this presentation, is to provide some background on what we do as one of the specialty business units that Michael mentioned, and how we operate within the family, and also a bit more broadly how we work with clients to achieve these ends. And towards the end, we will share a case study of some work that we've done that we think is really cool. And as is evident in the chat, it's very engaging, and a lot of people are dropping in questions and comments, which is awesome. We encourage that to continue, and we will be asking some questions of you guys as well, and want to get your input and do a couple straw polls as we go along. So a little bit about the lab and what makes us a bit different in terms of the specialty. Taking a step back, prior to the pandemic, we were headquartered in Midtown, and I guess still remain to be in New York. But as our offices have closed, we've all been working from home, which has been an interesting experience. But we also have offices across the globe and support clients across countries and cultures, and really provide that expertise wherever it's needed. So I want to skip a little bit of the formalities and kind of just jump into what it is we actually do and what makes us different. So you want to go to the next slide, Ryan. So you've already heard a bit about the role of a media agency from the team and some of the traditional media channels that we focus on. At the lab, we take those media opportunities a step further. So we are focusing our sights on the future, understanding where consumer behavior is headed and how that attention is changing, and then the role that technology and media will play within that sphere. So we leverage the expertise of our media brands network to do what we call future-proofing our clients' businesses from a competitive cross-industry type and for disruptive threats. So in contrast to some of the media channels that Michael had shared earlier, we look for opportunities in areas like those you see pictured here. So virtual reality, gaming and esports, wearables like Apple Watches, visual search like what you're seeing on the right. These are really the emerging spaces where brands have the opportunity to begin inserting messages. Some are, more familiar and a little bit more turnkey to media plans. Others are, way out there, next generation. So, for instance, many of you probably were even witnesses to this, but looking at the second panel from the left, the partnership between Fortnite and Travis Scott last April, which was something that our agency supported from a media side, was a live in-game concert that drew about 27.5 million unique visitors and was seen more than 45 million times. So it not only, that team was not only focused on bringing back lapsed users or those who had kind of waned over time, but also bringing folks who are new into the platform for new and exciting reasons. And it also allowed Travis Scott to break Spotify streaming records and debut his new album. So a win-win for both Epic with Fortnite and then Travis Scott. So a question for you guys, and I don't mean to overwhelm the chat, but when you think about this past year in particular, a lot of these areas were accelerated and adopted due to the pandemic. You think about work from home and just how this center of gravity has shifted to digital. And as a result of that, there's been a lot of technologies and platforms that have popped up that certain demographics are using that weren't previously. And I'm curious from your perspective as undergrads and graduates, what are those new platforms that you are seeing that you think, the lab should be looking at? Or should already be involved in? What things are you guys, what are popular with your demographic, your age group as college students? So just feel free to drop those in the chat, and as we keep going, we'll come back to those because I think it's really fun to see if we're right on. Usually we're doing pretty good. Okay, so how do we work with brands to do this cool stuff? So you might be surprised to learn that not all clients are sold and ready to start advertising in these spaces. So a lot of our job is actually educating, coaching, and persuading clients to enter into these newer channels. So we do our best to introduce innovation plans that are really tailored to our clients' needs and appetite, and to try to really expand beyond that tried and true methodology. And accordingly, we sort of offer different options. What we like to think about is an on-ramp to innovation. I've seen a couple of comments in the chat about narrative and storytelling. This is certainly true. This is one element of storytelling, building these ways in. But the first is knowledge innovation or thought leadership. So this really boils down to the education and information that allows for an easy inroad for clients to get an understanding of what territories are emerging, what they should be focused on, but maybe they're not ready to commit immediate investment in there yet. Then we have media plan innovation, which takes us a step further. So this is really introducing new partners and media channels to plans in data-driven ways that help us drive innovation into the client's actual media strategy. And then at the most robust level, we, for a handful of clients, have helped them innovate with their products and business models, so adapting them to the changing consumer behaviors. And again, especially as you think about in the last year, just how much has accelerated as a result of the pandemic and all of our consumer behavior changes, that's been pretty critical.
He just alluded to the 3 pillars of approach that we take in terms of onboarding clients to this innovation experience. And the first is definitely that knowledge innovation. As Sean alluded to, a lot of our clients are rooted in the traditional advertising model and aren't really ready to venture into these emergent technology territories. So what are the things that we are doing as an agency collectively to kind of bridge that gap in terms of knowledge? First and foremost, for the lab, it would definitely have to be our annual outlook. And the outlook identifies themes that helps marketers understand where their audiences are going today, but more importantly, over the course of the next 5 and 10 years. So if you guys are interested, you could go to the IPG Lab Media page, look up Outlook, and you'll be able to find this whole document for you to peruse and actually take stock of. So the trends that we covered this year that I think are extremely pertinent, first and foremost, the anywhere economy. Essentially what we were talking about beforehand, how everyone is working remotely and how new collaborative tools and software are making it possible for us to do our work from anywhere and anytime. Next would be gaming eats the world. Obviously, we know Twitch is popular. We know a ton of people are playing video games now, but we're starting to see gaming infiltrate other parts of culture. If you were paying attention to the Oscars on Sunday, you may have noticed that 2 gaming studios actually won the very first Academy Award from a gaming department. So we're starting to see like Unreal technology being leveraged to build sets on The Mandalorian or in movies. So that's just good ways to think about how gaming is transcending nerddom and making its way into mainstream media. The next would be the Splinternet. Some of you may be familiar that we have tools in America, GroupMe, Slack, but in China, they use WeChat and, they do Douyin and they have Alibaba as their main merchant. This is just an example of how different regions and different cultures are adapting and making nuanced changes to their internet and what's accessible via their platforms. And then lastly, the reinvention of social context. How you show up online widely differs depending on where you are. So when you're playing on Xbox Live with your friends, your comms are probably not classroom safe. But when you're on Twitter, maybe you're taking a more tongue-in-cheek approach as opposed to when you're on LinkedIn and you're communicating formally with people. All of these new digital environments are making people rethink how they present themselves online. Other examples of some of the industry intelligence that we put out to help close that knowledge gap that Sean was alluding to. First and foremost, the category disruption reports. This is a good way for us to isolate some of those territories that we cover in order to uncover the ways that the landscapes are shifting across different territories. So we've done the disruption of the vice economy, disruption of future of digital finance, the disruption of entertainment. And as you can imagine, we go into all of the different technologies that have since permeated the ecosystem and are fundamentally shifting the way that marketers operate in the space, but also how consumer attention is kind of fragmented across those different properties. In addition, we also offer newsletters. We have Fast Forwards and the Lab Weekly Analysis. You can subscribe to both of those via ipglab.com. And if you're looking for quick hits, I don't know if any of you read newsletters like the Morning Brew, it's really short and snappy way to get that information that you need. And then lastly, we have an award-winning Best in Class podcast from across the advertising network. It has actually won the Best Thought Leadership podcast of 2020. It's called Floor 9. And I would just very much encourage you guys to subscribe and take a listen. It's a very colloquial conversation that happens between our head of strategy and our head of partnerships, and they really dive into the cutting issues across the territories. Some of the recent episodes we've done are on meme culture and NFTs, so we're really trying to have our finger on the pulse of what's next and what's happening. So then it goes into media plan innovation. And this is where we actually get to start to tinker with the dollars and cents that's happening on the actual media planning and buying side of things. And we take an approach called the 99 framework in order to help inform this planning that we do. So how are we ultimately plotting all of these territories across this chart? There's 2 main criteria that we take into account. First of all, would be media and ad or maturity, what you're seeing on the left-hand side. And that is how ready each of these territories are to support brands from an advertising capacity. The bottom that you'll see is reach. And that's ultimately how many people are actually actively engaged in this territory. So you'll see blockchain and building virtual worlds is pretty dim in terms of both reach and ad maturity, whereas something like game streaming and influencers, whereas 5 years ago might have been in that same bucket, has now made its way all the way up into the 90% on both the reach and the maturity scale, indicating that it's very ready for brand advertisers to come aboard and participate in that environment. So as I basically gave you, 90% are those tried and true channels. The 9% are those ones that are just ready to start exploring and activating in. And the 1% would be for the absolute first movers if you're looking to make a splashy PR headline. So how do we inform our clients as to what are the best territories to actually activate in? So Sean, who is also on this call, is the champion master of the Futurecaster at our agency. And essentially what it is, it's a proprietary research and data tool that we have created based on a survey of 5,000 users across 50 different countries. And what we do is we ingest audiences from our clients. So let's say males 13 to 24. We run that audience against the proprietary survey in order to identify which of these innovation territories index highly for that audience. So for males 13 to 24, as you'd imagine, gaming, virtual reality, those are some things that might pop. But for someone, let's say female 40 and up, might be culture pops or social commerce as opposed to that category. So this is a really incredible tool that helps us leverage the insights we're able to pull from our client in order to overlay the innovation focus that we have at the IPG Media Lab. So a good way presenting this to our clients who definitely don't have an appetite to venture into the space is presenting it on this now to next timeline. So now are territories that have more immediate opportunity, that are in that 90% bucket that we were talking about, because they have the ad supported opportunities for brands. All the way in the next are ways that we have to get a little bit more creative and brainstorming about how do we enter these spaces from a brand perspective. It's not enough anymore to just show up and have a logo drop or a name drop in these environments, because consumers are becoming incredibly savvy to advertising kind of permeating all of these different media channels. Millennials and Gen Z are especially bullish on like hunting out where the ads are. I mean, for any of you that watch The Bachelor, they had like Peloton 5-second clips in the beginning. You know, 5 years ago, I probably wouldn't have been cognizant that that was actually an ad, but you know, today being jaded and working in the industry, I'm alert to all of those different trigger points. So those are kind of the persuasion and precision movements that Michael was talking about previously. And this is the really, really fun part of the job. And this is where I get to come in as a partnerships manager at the IPG Media Lab. How do we find all of these cool things for our clients to do? So it's my job to go out and talk to find folks that are working in the emerging tech ecosystem at the startup level, all the way to the tried and true media partners like Snapchat, Twitch, Amazon, people of that behemoth stature. And then I get to match make them with our clients based on their business and media challenges. So most of my day is spent scouring the web, reading all these newsletters indicating who's received funding, seed series, series A, series B, in order for me to be better informed on who are the major players across each of those territories that we index from a Futurecaster perspective. So here are a couple of the territories that you see. Some partners you may be familiar with. We have Twitch and Stream Elements for any of my gamers out there like myself. Podcasting, Megaphone was recently acquired by Spotify, and I would guarantee that probably 90% of the people on this call have a Spotify account or at least hack into somebody else's using their username and password. Voice, Rain, Spoken Layer, they're experts in helping you activate in the connected device space. And obviously OTT, Brightline, they're responsible for some of those more interesting ads that you're getting served during that 3-hour, 4-hour Hulu marathon that you're streaming from your couch. So bringing it all to life, Sean said we would show you a case study, so that's what I'm going to do. Mini Cooper is one of our clients. They're a subset of BMW, for any of you that are unfamiliar with the Austin Powers car maker. But we did something really interesting. One of their key challenges was, how do we get people to sign up for test drives? No one's really going to lots anymore. No one really books an appointment online to take a test drive. So what's a way that we can innovate on that model to perhaps make it a little bit more appealing? So what we did is we worked with a retail disruption startup called Beta. Some of you may have heard of it, but essentially what they do is they are an incubator for emerging tech products, and they don't have any products themselves. So all of these images that you see from other devices around the store are made by other retailers outside of Mini, outside of Beta. And essentially what they do is they afford these people rental space in their store in order to sell their products in a physical location. What's really interesting about Beta though, is that they leverage computer vision to the nth degree to ensure that you are making small optimizations in how products are presented and positioned in a physical retail environment. So based on all the heat map technology and all the reaction technology, we're able to tell, is the car inviting more people in with the door open? Are people spending more time with the car if we have the shades drawn? All of those pieces of information allow us to optimize in near real time how we are positioning the car in the environment. And what we found is at the end of a month-long campaign, oh, I probably should have said this Beta store is actually in the San Francisco Warriors Stadium. So we were getting a lot of that foot traffic in a market that we know has an appetite for this kind of electric vehicle in that San Francisco area. So people going to Warriors games, popping into the store before the game, interacting with the car, subsequently signing up for test drives. I think we ultimately wound up getting 400 people to sign up over the course of a month, which is a lot more they saw than any dealership in the area over the same time period. So again, this may not have been the most effective from driving an impression standpoint, but this was a major news story in the area, drove a lot of publicity, and was able to showcase the car in a new light, thusly making it more appealing to consumers. So this is just an example of some of the fun things we do, some of the cool partners and clients that we get to work with. So.
Yeah. So guys, if you're interested in keeping in touch with any of our work, or if you're, if any of the stuff that Ryan has talked about seems of interest, I know he mentioned a couple of these things here. These are just some opportunities for you guys to plug in and keep on top of it. Floor 9, as Ryan mentioned, that's our weekly podcast. It's great, background audio opportunity for you to just listen in and see what we're talking about. We have a Twitter page that links to a lot of our content. And we also have a Medium page where our esteemed writer, Richard Yao, produces weekly reports and editorials on things that are going on in the industry. And I strongly suggest for anybody who is interested in just getting into media and advertising in general, take advantage of these things. They're free, they're available. A lot of ad editorials are behind paywalls. So this is great stuff for you guys to get access to without having to worry about that. And I think with that, I will pass it to Mariana, who I believe has joined.
Hi, everybody. Sorry for the delay. But of course, after everybody just showed all of the great things UM and IPG Media Lab has, there's also the opportunity for you guys to join us. And right here, we have a barcode where it will, I believe, lead you to the careers website. And there you'll see all our opportunities listed, going from entry-level roles all the way to higher level roles, but they all vary across media planning and media investment as well. So right there in the descriptions, you'll be able to get more familiar with what the roles entail. So I would highly encourage you guys to take a deep dive into this career site. And by far, probably my favorite part, the residency program, which in other words is our internship program. I myself was a resident, so this is why I really love speaking about the residency. In the past, when it was in person, it was a 10-week summer internship experience. However, due to COVID, it has been cut short for 8 weeks. So now I believe it's going to take place from mid-June all the way to mid-August. Currently, applications are still open. So I would highly encourage anybody interested just to explore media or getting to know more what UM is all about to apply either today, in the upcoming days, just because spots are filling up. So it'll be a great opportunity just to get hands-on exposure, dealing with a client, a brand, and just getting the day-to-day hint of what media is. And another barcode. If you're interested in any more information or being part of our mailing list, you could also scan this barcode and be informed of any job openings and things of that sort.
We regularly do hiring blitzes. And so if you fill out this form, you'll be on the list for HR. And as they go through hiring blitzes, they use the names that sign up here as a resource.
And social media as well. UM also has their Instagram pages, their Facebook page, Twitter, and LinkedIn. Definitely encourage you guys to follow it, get more of an idea of what our values, our mission is, and you will see a lot of images. I believe some from recent campaigns that we have done and things like that. So definitely a good page to be looking at. And now Q&A. So if anybody has any questions, this is the time.
Is there any advice that you can give to the students that are here now? What are some of the things that can make them stand out as candidates? Is it technology? Is it a really great cover letter? Is it experiences in marketing, obviously already? What kind of advice would you give to some of the students?
I'm happy to take that one. And Michael, Mariana, feel free to jump in. So funny enough, before the lab, I started on the HR side, so familiar with this process and talking to students. I think what Catherine had shared earlier, I will echo a lot of the points that she made in the Ad Council presentation. There's a lot of crossover there. If you guys are keeping up with what's going on in the industry, I think is a huge bonus to you if you can speak to some of that stuff when you're either on a call with a recruiter, or if you're fortunate to get in the door and have a conversation in an interview. Always being up to date on the newest trends and happenings is great. Communication skills are key. practice your storytelling. Like everyone here has a story. It doesn't matter what your background is in terms of discipline. You know, we talk a lot of the time. I see someone has mentioned they're an English major. So was Ryan. Ryan was an English major, and he now works in technology and innovation for the Media Lab. So, you know, I was in psychology, I moved to HR, and then I moved into the Media Lab. It's not, and I'm sure, I think even Michael, your background earlier was in history. Is that right?
Yep, math and history.
Yeah. So never feel like you're pigeonholed based on your you know, what you graduated and the degree that you graduated with. Just make sure that your story and how you're telling it and presenting it when your time comes makes sense. So communication skills, professional writing skills, and tapping into some of those resources to keep up with the latest trends, I think would be my top 3. I don't know, Michael, if you have anything to add.
Yeah, I would just say that it's really more about the soft skills. It's critical thinking. And it's funny you mentioned being an English major, because I was talking to the head of the analytics team at Kinesso, and she said that she has English majors on her team, and what she values from them is the ability to read a text, pick out the important information, and figure out how to apply it to a real life situation. So, you know, it's about the skills that you have, not necessarily the degree that you have. Being detail oriented is definitely important. We deal in millions of dollars and billions of impressions, and being able to, you know, take a look at numbers and you know, try to figure out what's right or wrong with those numbers is important. So detail oriented, definitely some math, but probably not more than the probability and statistics, maybe algebra, but the rest of it you can learn. Your work ethic, being proactive, taking responsibility for your work, that's really important. And then just being prepared. You know, if you're going to be successful, you're going to be the person who's raising your hand and asking for projects, taking notes when someone's explaining what needs to be done, so that you can go back to them later and do the project on your own the next time. So you can learn just about everything on the job, but those soft skills have to be just a part of you.
What is the work culture like at both organizations? Is there any information you'd like to share in terms of the work culture itself?
Well, I work at J3 specifically, so it's like an extension within that we just focus on Johnson & Johnson products. However, so our office is kind of located on a separate building. However, I would say like across when I was a resident, like I did have the opportunity to visit different offices and interact with different team members. But I would say although it is pretty laid back, I feel like sometimes we tend to forget that it's still an office setting. So I would definitely say that don't let that deter you from doing the basic, you know, office, you know, following the basic office etiquette, you know, still dressing, though it's business casual most of the time, you know, not coming in, you know, workout gear and things of that sort. So I think that's one of the things that a lot of us, even as interns, we struggled with at first. Just remembering it's still an office space, it's still your workspace. As to people, everything as well is pretty laid back. Communication flows, in my opinion. Everybody's open to having a conversation. Like I'm also part of a mentor program where my mentor is a senior vice president. And it's like we have monthly talks, and it's just like having random conversations about things, about life. Everybody's pretty nice, fairly open to, you know, for you to ask them questions, you know, pick their brain, if you're interested in a different account, things like that. So I would definitely say it's a really great culture, even to kick off your career in media. I feel like it'll really, you know, make you want to keep exploring further.
Great, thank you so much. And then just to kind of follow up regarding the residency, are there any deadlines that students should be aware of, or would that all be kind of be mentioned via the QR codes that were shared?
So my suggestion to anybody who's interested in the residency is to apply immediately. I know that they're in the process of interviewing candidates now. and it's fast approaching. So if that's something that you think you're interested in, please apply to like today or tomorrow, by the end of the week at the very least, because that's the best way to get involved and get into the pipeline.
Yeah, I know the UM spots are filled, but I think there are some within Media Brand still. But yeah, definitely sooner rather than later. Full-time, we're hiring all the time. And as I mentioned, we do have hiring blitzes for the junior levels at UM. So that one QR code that was shared that leads you to the form, I would, there's no harm in filling that out.
Great. And the residency is for just undergrads, or is that recent grads too?
It's for rising seniors.
Rising seniors. Okay. All right. Good to know. Okay. I mean, I think we've run out of time. How do the students stay in touch with you? Should they just follow IPG and UM on the social media that was shared, or do you suggest LinkedIn or any other way?
LinkedIn works. I'm happy to drop my if you haven't already found me on there, I'll drop my LinkedIn page in the chat. And yeah, of course, keep following our trends and all the UM pages, the IPG Media Lab pages. That's the best way. Stay in touch.
Okay, great. Thank you so very much. The QR codes are very important. As they said, get on that right away. So remember your resume, your cover letter, you need to work on those. Remember what they had said in terms of the transferable skills. Very important to have that on your resume and in your cover letter. So make sure that you take a look at that and make sure that you have those necessary buzzwords that are on your documents before you send it off for their opportunities. So that's it for us today. I think, again, this was really great. Thank you, everybody from IPG, Media Lab, UM, Worldwide, and the Ad Council. So much really great advice and information. Really amazing places to intern and to work. And I really do hope that a lot of our students will be able to do that.
Make sure to check out the My Career tab on the BC Navigator app, where you can track your career progress based on the amount of credits you've earned, stay updated on upcoming events from the Magner Center, and watch our videos for insight and advice on your career field.